In 2008, archaeologists opened a sealed Ming Dynasty coffin in Taizhou on China's eastern coast and found fabric that had survived 500 years in near-perfect condition. The coffin's construction used a precise layering of lime, sticky rice paste, and charcoal, a system designed to seal oxygen and control moisture at the molecular level. The clothes inside had also been pre-treated: rice water, vinegar rinses, plant ash lye, methods modern laundry detergent companies don't want you reaching for because none of them can be patented. Traditional Chinese households routinely kept clothing functional for 20 to 30 years. A single silk robe was repaired, re-dyed, and passed across generations. The fiber didn't collapse because the washing system wasn't trying to strip it, it was trying to protect it. And the chemistry behind every one of these methods has since been confirmed by modern textile science. The first trick is rice water. This was the foundational rinse of traditional Chinese laundry going back to at least the Zhou dynasty, roughly 1046 BCE. You boil rice, save the water, let it cool, and soak your fabric in it for 20 minutes before the final rinse. What that water contains matters enormously. Rice water is loaded with inositol, a cyclic sugar alcohol that penetrates deep into a fiber shaft and stays there after rinsing, acting as an internal brace that reduces mechanical damage every time the fabric moves or bends. It also carries starch polysaccharides, natural film formers that coat each fiber strand, cutting friction between threads and therefore abrasion, pilling, and thinning. Modern fabric conditioners simulate this with synthetic polymers that build up over time and stiffen the weave. Rice water biodegrades instead. The second method is plant ash lye. The Book of Rites, a Zhou dynasty text documenting Chinese social codes from nearly 3,000 years ago, instructs that dirty clothing be washed with plant ash. Plant ash contains potassium carbonate, which dissolves in water into a mildly alkaline solution, roughly pH 9 to 10, alkaline enough to dissolve grease and protein-based stains without attacking the fiber. Modern detergents sit between pH 9 and pH 12. At pH 12, you start breaking peptide bonds in protein fibers, chemically degrading silk and wool with every normal wash. Plant ash lye delivered the cleaning power without the destruction. Third, honey locust pods. By the Southern Song dynasty, around the 12th century, Chinese households ground the pods of the Gladitsia sinensis tree into a powder and rolled it into washing balls. The pods are dense with saponins, plant compounds structurally similar to soap, but gentler on natural fibers, forming a stable foam that lifts oils and dirt off the fiber without the ionic surfactants that cause most modern fiber degradation. Sustainable fashion researchers now write peer-reviewed papers about saponins as the future of eco-laundry. Chinese washerwomen figured it out 800 years ago. The fourth method is the vinegar rinse. Silk and wool are protein fibers that dye best with acid dyes, dyes that bond to fiber in a low pH environment. Rinsing silk or wool in diluted white vinegar after washing drops the pH back toward the fiber's natural range, around pH 4.5 to 5.5, closing the cuticle-like scale structure on wool and tightening silk's amino acid bonds. The result is a fiber that feels softer, sheds water better, and holds color longer, since the dye bonds aren't stressed by residual alkalinity. Traditionally, Chinese weavers rinse their silk in diluted vinegar after every wash. Number 5 is salt. Salt soaks in cold water before washing a newly dyed garment are documented across Chinese textile traditions. Soaking a freshly dyed garment in salt water makes sodium ions compete with dye molecules for water-binding sites on the fiber, driving dye deeper into the fiber structure. What dyers call exhaustion, the degree to which dye fixes onto the fiber instead of sitting loosely on the surface. Dye that's deeply exhausted into the fiber doesn't bleed in the wash. Salt soaking before the first wash is the difference between a shirt that fades after 3 washes and one that holds color for 3 years. Method 6 is green tea. Traditional households used cold, not hot, green tea as a final rinse for dark garments, especially black and deep indigo. Green tea contains catechins, a class of tannin compounds making up between 20 and 40% of tea's dry weight. Tannins bind fiber and dye simultaneously, one end of the molecule latching onto the fabric and the other onto the dye, physically anchoring color to the weave. Textile researchers now describe this chemistry as natural mordant auxiliaries. When tannin meets iron minerals in the water, those complexes darken, why a green tea rinse actively deepens black or navy fabric rather than just preserving it. Number 7 is wood ash water for indigo fabric. Indigo is a vat dye, a class of dye that only bonds to fiber in a reduced alkaline state, so maintaining indigo-dyed fabric means keeping the washing environment between pH 9 and 10. Wood ash water, made by steeping hardwood ash in water overnight and straining off the liquid, produces an alkaline solution in exactly that range, protecting the indigo chromophore, the molecular structure responsible for the color, from oxidative degradation. Modern chemistry confirms why it worked. Number 8. Cold water washing. Silk fibers are made of fibroin, a protein with a crystalline structure that becomes unstable above roughly 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Cotton contains crystalline cellulose regions that contract and distort in hot water. Traditional Chinese practice across every dynasty specifies cold or room temperature water for fine fabric. Even Xiangyunsha silk, the ancient Gambiard Canton gauze, is hand-washed below 40 degrees Celsius. Modern washing machines default to warm or hot cycles, which contract cotton, denature silk proteins, and cause the shrinkage most people assume is just how fabric ages. Number 9 is shade drying. Direct sunlight contains UV radiation in the 280 to 400 nanometer range. Cellulose in cotton and linen absorbs UV radiation, initiating a photooxidation reaction that breaks covalent bonds in the fiber. Silk and wool proteins undergo a similar UV-driven degradation called photoyellowing. Traditional Chinese fabric care consistently documents drying fabric in ventilated shade, never in direct sun. The original solution was a roof overhang and patience. Method 10 is mending as a structural practice. Traditional Chinese households treated every visible mend as an extension of the fabric's life, rather than evidence of its failure. Fine satin stitch embroidery was used to reinforce worn areas before they tore completely. Heavy cotton weaves were backed with fresh cloth and stitched through both layers to distribute stress. Imperial court garments show evidence of deliberate reinforcement stitching at high wear points, applied proactively. Proof this was engineering, not poverty response. Number 11 is fermented rice water. Left to ferment at room temperature for 2 to 7 days, naturally occurring enzymes, alpha amylase, beta amylase, and proteases break the starch chains into shorter glucose oligomers, and the inositol concentration rises. The result has a slightly acidic pH, between 4 and 5, ideal for silk, and works as both a gentle enzyme treatment and a pH conditioner. Women of the Yao ethnic group in Guangxi province have used it for hair and fiber care continuously for over 1,000 years. 12 is chrysanthemum water for white silk. Chrysanthemum flowers contain luteolin and apigenin, flavonoid compounds with mild optical brightening properties. Rinsed in cooled chrysanthemum tea, these compounds deposit on the silk's fiber surface and absorb UV light in the 360 to 380 nanometer range, re-emitting it as slightly blue-shifted visible light that counteracts the yellow tones white silk develops from oxidation. Modern optical brighteners work by the same fluorescence mechanism. Chrysanthemum water delivers a fraction of the intensity, but unlike synthetic brighteners, it doesn't accumulate in waterways or break down into toxic byproducts. Number 13. Plum vinegar for mineral staining. Wash water across much of ancient China was hard, high in calcium and magnesium ions that deposit on fabric as gray or yellow mineral films over time. Plum vinegar, fermented from ume plums, contains citric and malic acid, both of which chelate those ions and pull them off the fiber, dissolving buildup that would otherwise permanently dull color. Modern laundry descalers use synthesized citric acid for the exact same reaction. 14 is camphor wood storage. Camphor wood, Cinnamomum camphora, releases camphor vapors continuously from the cut wood surface. Camphor is a natural insect repellent that disrupts the nervous systems of textile-eating moths, carpet beetles, and silverfish. Chinese wealthy households built their entire wardrobe chests from camphor wood. A freshly cut camphor chest from the Qing dynasty still smells strongly on opening today. Modern moth prevention uses synthetic naphthalene or paradichlorobenzene, both classified as possible human carcinogens by the EPA. 15 is sealed clay jar storage for silk. Before modern climate-controlled museum storage existed, Chinese households preserved their finest silk garments in sealed ceramic jars. Clay is hygroscopic. It absorbs and releases moisture, creating a self-regulating microclimate inside the jar. This mimics the principle that the Smithsonian's Museum Conservation Institute now identifies as the gold standard for textile preservation, maintaining stable relative humidity between 45 and 55%. Sealed clay storage achieved this without electricity. 16 is the sour rice paste sizing technique. Before storing garments long-term, traditional weavers applied a thin coat of sour rice paste, fermented starch, to the fabric surface, let it dry, and stored the garment flat. The dried starch coat created a sacrificial barrier between the fiber and atmospheric pollutants, especially sulfur compounds from coal and wood smoke that cause acid degradation in silk. The starch was washed off before wearing. 17 is the beaten stone technique, washing by rhythmic beating on a smooth stone rather than wringing or twisting. Wringing a wet garment puts enormous torsional stress on the weave, twisting fibers against each other and stretching the warp structure. Beating drives water out through compression rather than torsion. Modern textile conservators explicitly prohibit wringing or twisting for antique textiles. The same conclusion the stone technique reached through centuries of observation. 18 is ginger root deodorizing. Fresh ginger root contains gingerols and chagols, phenolic compounds with confirmed antimicrobial activity against a broad range of bacteria. The primary cause of fabric odor is not the sweat itself but bacterial metabolism of sweat compounds. Soaking fabric in ginger root water made by boiling sliced ginger root and cooling the liquid delivers these antimicrobial phenolics directly into the weave. Traditional Chinese documentation describes ginger water treatment for work clothing and bedding specifically because those items accumulated the heaviest bacterial load. 19 is the egg white treatment for worn silk. Thin silk that's begun to lose weave integrity can be partially consolidated with a diluted egg white solution. Albumin, the primary protein in egg white, fills microtears in the fiber surface and bridges weakened thread crossings. Once dry, the film stiffens slightly, reducing further mechanical stress at the damaged points. Traditional Chinese households used this as a temporary repair for fine silk garments before they could be sent to a professional weaver for reweaving. Modern textile conservation uses an acrylic consolidant called Paraloid B72 for the same structural purpose. 20 is the river mud application on ancientchina silk. Ancientchina, Gambeard Canton gauze, involves coating hand-dyed silk in iron-rich Pearl River mud. The iron ions in the mud react chemically with the tannins in the Gambier plant juice used to dye the silk, creating iron tannate complexes that are permanently black, antimicrobial, UV-resistant, and water-repellent. This fabric has been produced continuously for over 1,500 years, one of the most sophisticated material engineering achievements in the history of textile production, requiring no synthetic input whatsoever. 21 is the repeated sun bleaching of linen using ash water. For white linen garments, traditional practice meant washing in plant ash water, spreading the fabric on clean grass in open air, and repeatedly wetting it throughout the day while UV light bleached it naturally, a process called crofting in Western textile traditions. The combination of UV exposure, residual alkalinity from the ash water, and atmospheric oxygen drives photooxidation of yellow chromophores in cellulose, producing an optically brighter white without chlorine bleach, which modern research shows actually damages cellulose fibers by attacking glycosidic bonds. 22 is controlled folding with acid-free packing material. Traditional Chinese textile storage documents describe folding silk garments with sections of plain rice paper between each fold. The rice paper absorbs any residual moisture or acid from the atmosphere before it can contact the silk. Modern archival textile storage at institutions like the Met and the Smithsonian uses acid-free tissue paper for identical reasons, a practice already standard in Chinese noble households by the Tang dynasty. 23 is the clay and charcoal coffin burial method used for preservation of ceremonial garments. The Ming Dynasty burial that opened this video used a lime and sticky rice paste exterior seal, an inner charcoal layer to absorb oxygen and prevent oxidation, and a clay layer to stabilize humidity. Together, these created an atmosphere so controlled that silk embroidery survived 5 centuries with color and weave structure intact. 24 is the natural re-dyeing cycle. Rather than discarding faded garments, traditional Chinese practice incorporated periodic re-dyeing as a standard part of a garment's life cycle. Natural dyes, made from indigo, madder, gardenia, sappanwood, and dozens of other plant sources, could be applied over existing color to refresh and deepen the shade. A 30-year-old garment might have been re-dyed 4 or 5 times, each time redepositing color molecules into the fiber while preserving the physical structure of the cloth. 25 is cold water starch removal before re-wearing stored garments. After long storage in sized rice paste, as described in Trick 16, the garment needed the starch shell removed before wearing. This was done with a cold soak, never hot water, because heat could set the dried starch more permanently into the fiber and cause yellowing. The cold soak dissolved the starch film completely, leaving the fiber beneath intact. Modern dry cleaning solvents strip the natural oils in wool and silk that keep fiber flexible. Cold water starch removal left those oils untouched. Here's what ties all 25 together. Every single one of these methods operates at the fiber level, not the stain level. Modern laundry science is built around stain removal. Traditional Chinese textile care was built around fiber preservation. Those are fundamentally different engineering problems. The reason these methods got abandoned has nothing to do with their effectiveness. Synthetic detergents entered the Chinese market aggressively through the 20th century. cheaper and faster, and the commercial incentive was never to preserve garments longer. It was to sell detergent more often. So here's what I want to know from you. Which one of these are you actually going to test first? Drop it in the comments, specifically whether you're starting with the rice water rinse or the vinegar treatment, and what fabric you're working with. If this opened up something in the way you think about what you own and how long it could last, hit the like button and share it with one person who still buys clothes like they expect them to fall apart. Subscribe if you want to keep going, because next week we're pulling apart a system that's even older and even more precisely engineered than anything we covered today.